Hello everyone. As I have been indicating on the channel recently, I have made an Oracle deck. It is officially now available on makeplayingcards.com. All relevant links mentioned today will be in the description box, but you can also find all of them on my website at sorciasoaring.com. Now, the oracle that I made is effectively a reproduction of a historical manuscript called The Dramatic Dreams of Pantagruel. I have correspondingly called the oracle itself The Dreams of Pantagruel. It is 120 cards, all in linen cardstock. I will explain more about it in a moment. But I just kind of wanted to introduce it here and to indicate that it was created as part of an experiment. The art in this deck was first brought to my attention by Lennon Smith, who I believe it was last year after I made that early video indicating that I was rather fond of what most people deemed rather creepy art, and that I didn't totally understand the intensity of negative tone behind the use of the word creepy. And in that video, I basically explored some of that through, for example, the work of Hieronymus Bosch, some of my favorite decks in my personal tarot and oracle collection, or oracular library, as I have taken to calling it at times. And I also connected it to, for example, some children's books that I grew up with and so on. But at any rate, Lennon messaged me not too long after that video, and we sort of struck up a conversation because she basically ended up saying, I don't know if you've heard of this art, but this seems really fascinating, and I've been meditating on this stuff, and it's, bringing up a lot of interesting and creative ideas. And I couldn't possibly agree with her more. So the more I thought about it and the more I explored these images, the more I desperately wanted them in deck form to make it more easily accessible, to kind of flip through them, spend time with any one or other in particular, without taxing my printer or my journal space too much, in a way that just seemed like it would be answered somewhat better by a deck. And as I will describe in a moment, I then took that opportunity to kind of incorporate much of my own worldview in terms of historical books as well. Again, I've said this a million times on the channel, but for those of you who may be new or who don't know, I was formerly an archivist and rare books librarian for 10 years in actually 3 different countries. And I am really, really fascinated in the way in which we interface with the actual tangible artifacts, items, ephemera, and images and so on of history. This is a living relationship as far as I see it, and the extent to which we in the current modern day have a fascination for, but also a total control over historical narrative also really, really interests me. So, The Dreams of Pantagruel Oracle, I am going to do a full walkthrough of the deck. It kind of depends on how this all turns out in the editing process. But for now, I'll show a few quick intro cards before sort of rejigging the camera angle to make that more workable. So as I indicated, this is a historical manuscript that I've taken these images from. Just initially here, there are 3 title page cards. These 2 are the title pages from the actual manuscript from which I got these images. It is in the public domain. This is the book itself, 1869, printed in Paris by a Mr. Edwin Tross. It is a reproduction of the Renaissance imagery for which this was the title page. In the same 1869 book, in this case, it was reproduced as well, along with the images. But this is the title page attributed for the original, indicating the original 1565 volume. I'm going to discuss this in more detail in a moment, because what I'm going to do when I flip around to discuss the cards and do a walkthrough is actually read out the little companion booklet that I made for the deck. Importantly, on MakePlayingCards.com, the deck comes shrink wrapped in an effort to conserve cost. And the little guidebook was not being produced in a way that I felt was quite sufficient or sort of in line with what I was trying to accomplish. So what I've done is I've made the little guidebook, it's about 8 pages, that I have written, available as a free download on my website. It is currently listed under the relevant blog post about this deck. So I would recommend going and taking a look at that. There's, I've sort of built a blog post around the guidebook as well. So you'll hear the audio for the guidebook here. But for those of you who are interested in these images, even generally, even if you're not interested in the deck, I would recommend going and checking out that blog post. Again, all relevant links in the description. What I did with this title page card here is a little bit of a joke, effectively, is I formatted it rather like a historical title page that you would find in a book, a volume, post-printing press, post-invention of printing press. And what this says here is, the Dreams of Pantagruel, Oracle cards for the use of diverse seekers, though curious in nature, perhaps drolatic in temperament, in the arts of dreamers, contemplatives, diviners, poets, and such sundry applications as required by sovereign discernment or magical practice. And then you have my logo, Cork, Ireland, because that is where technically I have created this deck, S soaring, G for me, and the current year, 2023, in Roman numerals. So that's my little joke card, sort of indicating that I'm the next layer in this process. Again, this entire deck in some ways is meant to be very droll and amusing, as you will see in a moment. Okay, so I'm going to flip now to doing the walkthrough with the audio of the guidebook read over it. And after that, I will do a quick sort of demonstration of how the deck shuffles and so on. Okay, so I'll see you on the other side. Forward on the Dreams of Pantagruel. This deck, which we might be able to call an oracle, was initially created with a few intentions in mind. As a meditative or contemplative tool, as an instrument of satire to navigate social quandaries and the vicissitudes of daily life, as an experimental foray into the world of witches' familiars or servitors, as an homage to the winding provenance and scintillating world of the historical book, as primary source material, as artifact, etc., and for highlighting the joy and personal gnosis from the drolatic and strange. What is a drollery? Though the meaning of the word drolatic is disputed, drollery refers to the amusing, often hybrid persons or creatures found in the margins of manuscripts and historical art. Most popular during the late Middle Ages, the word comes from the French drôlerie, a joke. The English word drôle makes its way through French, potentially from Middle Dutch, to indicate an imp or goblin. What is a book? The idea behind the visual presentation of this deck, as well as the specifics of its history, is to bring to the foreground the impact of considering the book as an object or artifact. With images roughly contemporaneous to the birth of tarot, in the rise and spread of printing techniques and changes in the publishing industry, let alone the entire world of 19th century glorification and reproduction of Renaissance works, what do we call originals? Why? What is the difference between the 1869 volume from which these images originate versus any other such copy out there? What are the differences between the 19th and 16th century copies? Is it the raw materials, the cover, the paper, the ink, the font, the social context, who made it, the intention behind its distribution, its longevity? You will notice I have kept certain features of the book visible on each card. In some cards, you will see traces of the image on the next page peeking through. The cards are numbered in order of their appearance in the volume. Collation signatures have been kept in place as and when they appear. 2 unnumbered cards feature facsimiles of the various title pages in the book. 1 unnumbered card does not. The card backs and the covers of this pamphlet are from the marbled end papers and the leather binding from the 1869 volume. I have produced the deck in linen cardstock as a basic nod to the textural effect of chain lines inlaid paper. What is Rabelais? François Rabelais, born between 1483 to 1494 and died 1553, was a former Franciscan and Benedictine, trained physician and doctor, Greek scholar, French Renaissance humanist, lover and collector of stories, and author of the various books detailing the lives and adventures of giants Gargantua and his son Pantagruel. His inspiration for the name Gargantua originated in stories told among the French peasantry of a kindly giant with voracious appetite who had formed various local geographical phenomena in dropping them from his basket. His volumes feature biting satire, passages of Renaissance humanism and critical commentary on the clergy, particularly in the wake of the Reformation, as well as humorous, scatological, bawdy, and wine-soaked stories. The popularity of these publications in France apparently came third only to the Bible and the Imitation of Christ, and were thoroughly enjoyed by King Francis I. But what is not Rabelais? Rabelais was, most likely, not the creator of the images in this deck. The drolatic Dreams of Pantagruel, or in French, Les Songes drolatiques de Pantagruel, was published by Richard Breton in 1565, a series of 120 images supposedly representing characters from Pantagruel's dreams. The general academic consensus is that the illustrator/engraver was most likely François Desprez, who created similar images for two other publications under Breton in 1567. And what is not Rabelais? These images are not taken from a Renaissance copy, but rather from a reproduction of the Breton Desprez engravings published in 1869 in Paris by a Mr. Edwin Tross, which are in the public domain. You may, therefore, think of this deck as a borrowing of a borrowing of a borrowing of a borrowing. What is definitely not Rabelais? Crucially, it is not my intention to glorify or elevate the past. For example, this deck can easily be used to explore tropes around sexism or representation of gender and sexual identity, then and now. It can also be used to seek out and highlight the shadows in our understanding of inclusivity, insofar as it does or does not resist categorization. What happens when we employ the aesthetics of historical satire to contemporary society? Does that work? What do you think that says about us? About them? About our assumptions about them? About their potential forethought of us? This deck was created, among other things, to explore these questions. There are no intended limits on the use of this deck, nor are any of the intentions behind its creation requisites for its use. Trim it, customize it, mod it as needed. Cut it up and use it for collage with impunity. Glue it in your notebooks. Use it for stuffing dolls and poppets. Maybe even use it for divination. Yours, in sincere drollery, Passing Fool. I saw a fool upon a bridge. He capered in the cooling mist, with ladled hand and shaking fist to raucous tunes on feathered bow, a lonely waltz he knows we know. I love to dance in iron shoes, the less fool me, and more fool you. So there you have it. That's the entire deck. Now, a couple words about the size of the deck, the cardstock. It is your usual make plain cards. Tarot size, I believe it's, 2.75 inches by 4.75. Is it 70 millimeters by, is it 110? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is that sort of standard make plain cards tarot size. I have done it in linen cardstock, as I indicated in the description that I just read. And what I'm actually really pleased about with that, in addition to just, as I indicated, the sort of book nerdery going on, is that since it is 120 cards thick, it does allow for the deck to be a little bit more slim than it would have been otherwise. You can already see it is quite chunky. The measurement across here, I believe, is about 4 centimeters last I checked, if I can remember. I don't remember numbers very well, though. So I believe it's about 4 centimeters. And One thing I've definitely been considering exploring is, you know, occasionally splitting the deck in two and just sort of doing either a study or contemplation, or even due to some of the elements of landscape in the deck, you know, walking out and about with only part of the deck with me to make not only it more travel sizable in some ways, but also to be able to split up its use across my living space, because as I indicated in the guidebook, but also actually more distinctly in the blog post that I wrote, where I talk about some of my initial ideas about where I'm going with this in terms of my personal practice. I do kind of want this to function in terms of, you know, familiars, witches' familiars, or servitors, and other, you know, for the purpose of other magical workings, which means that it would actually benefit me at times to divvy the deck up into sections and start developing an idea of, you know, who goes where and does what at times. In addition, like I said, to any other such use like divination and so on. Up to this point, I've mostly been using it in readings for myself, and I will intersplice some pictures, show cutaways of that on the screen here. But again, you can see more about that on my blog. There are 2 posts sort of indicating how that's been going. And so, yeah, I think what I'll do now is make an attempt to shuffle on screen, and hopefully not make a mess of things. So as you can see, it makes for a pretty flexible shuffle, and there's a decent amount of weight to the deck. I personally really like watching the marbled end papers kind of like blend and meld together as I shuffle overhand. All right, let's draw a quick card and see what we get. I did recently have this put in order so that I could do the walkthrough, so we'll see what we get. Okay. Cut the deck, as I always do in this really weird way, and ooh, number 63. This is actually the guy that I originally put on the box that I had considered designing. Again, I was not actually happy with the box, and it was very expensive for what it was. So I do really like this guy. I love his curiosity about this little herb, and then the notion that there's one sprouting out of the top of his head is really, really lovely. E3 is the collation signature here. Which is a note for the press that prints the book rather than any kind of indication about the illustration itself. So there you have it. The Dreams of Pantagruel Oracle, available now on makeplayingcards.com. Link in the description box, but also do check out the blog post over on sorcerersoaring.com. And as sort of shown on screen as I was talking here, there are also citations in the free downloadable PDF companion book, introduction companion book, that gives some starter information for more on this manuscript and some of the motifs and artistic concepts, art historical concepts behind it, as well as showing where I got some of my own statements from in that booklet. So yep, I don't know how to end this, because of course this is me deciding to do something that is actually going out in the world. So I'm just going to awkwardly say, I hope everyone is doing well, taking care of themselves to the best of their ability, and being kind. And I will see you all next time. Bye!